People of Reddit who had a guest ruin the wedding. What happened? I worked weddings. The best was the estranged, divorced father hadn't been in the picture for 20 years and who was not invited that showed up, recognized the bartender as his ex-wife's friend, and starts grabbing everything available to throw at her. Police escorted him off the premises. Servers at a restaurant I was the despig at back in university came into the kitchen after the reception broke up, telling us that the groom's drunken father had just been loudly proclaiming that he was going to go watch his son frick his new wife. Jeez. Pity I missed that one. Wasn't there, but friends of mine tell the story of how the best man's speech involved telling everyone that he and the groom had been lovers since college and that if there was any real justice in the world the two of them would be getting married at the reception in front of everyone. Sounded pretty freaking epic. At least he was polite and waited until after the wedding to ruin the wedding. Didn't ruin the wedding for everyone but pretty bad. My dad got remarried when all of us kids were adults. His new wife had an adult son. My sister dated and slept with her now stepbrother. Later when my stepbrother was marrying someone else, my sister decided on the day of the wedding it was her duty to tell the bride that she had slept with her fiance. Somehow the day had to be about my sister. On. Off. My sister's wedding album looks like her sister-in-law was the star. Nearly every getting ready, speech, cake cutting, bouquet toss, even the I do's, she's either directly in the middle, has barged in and is smiling straight at the camera, or is standing there with her boyfriend of the month. My sister didn't want her as a bridesmaid, just did it because she was invited to be one to the guy the sister-in-law was engaged to before that boyfriend. My father-in-law repeatedly used my husband's ex-GF's name during his speeches, and when talking to me, his toast at the wedding was full of slurred speech, and a story about Mark and Alyssa and their budding romance and how adorable it was. I'm not Alyssa. Alyssa was his GF in high school. His parents got divorced when he was young. He was a severely abusive alcoholic, and I've met him twice outside of our wedding. He didn't see much of my husband after he was 12 years old, very out of touch. That said, we had been dating 6-7 years before we got married. He should at least get my name right. Not ruined, so much as unexpected. My brother had an interesting toast at our wedding. He is genuinely a super friendly guy that everyone likes. He proceeded to get fairly drunk and when his best man speech started, he proceeded to thank all for attending. Next, he had to thank the grandparents for attending and doing what they did, gesturing with air quotes, so that our parents could be here. Next was a thanks to the parents for doing what they did so we kids could all be here. He then mumbles God bless the mashed potatoes and drops the mic, stumbling off the dance floor. We had a good meal of prime rib and some of the best chipotle pepper mashed potatoes ever. The whole reception erupted in laughter and mom went to the chef to get the recipe. Dubbed wedding potatoes. Gold potatoes enough for 4 to 6 people. Heavy cream. 1/4 to 1/2 depending on desired constancy. Smoky Gouda cheese. 8 Oz. Shredded and mixed in. Chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. 1/2 of the 6-ounce can. Finely chopped. My friend got married and decided to have a private ceremony but an open reception in a massive hayfield in Vermont. They invite a huge number of people. Over 300 show up and it's a predictable apocalypse now crap fight from 10 AM till around 6 PM, when everyone is seriously liquored up. People in and out all day, with 4 constant groups, the direct family of mostly tipsy adults, the bride's sister's college friends, from the women's studies major and model UN team, the groom's home friends, who are all either farmers or animal breeders, and the bride's friends, the guys I came with, numerous interests but a mutual love of poking things with sticks. There are some minor altercations between the home friends and college friends, but it's a drunken fire party in the middle of nowhere, so some yelling and boisterous ideological disagreement was expected and encouraged by many. He was calling you a feminazi, you gonna go sort I am out, but it came to a head when a heated discussion turned to a girl getting hit with a hot coal shovel. Utter chaos. Multiple 911 calls. Police cruisers from 3 different departments and a couple of ambulances later, we had been given the order to disperse. The problem was that we were all blind, drunk and shouty, so after a few arrests and a stern tongue lashing from the statties, we put to bed several people well beyond the legal limit and sent home a lot of questionable people. What about the girl hit with the shovel? Well, the guy had no idea it was the recently used coal shovel and just wanted to smear a little dirt on the girl. She had Yutsta vodka cranberry on him. He's a veterinarian and dragged her off, apologizing profusely, and fixed her up inside of an hour. The EMT didn't even bother taking the dressing off. Unfortunately, you can't undo 15 near simultaneously 911 calls. Both of them being too drunk to drive, they stayed the night, and we found them in the same freaking sleeping bag come morning. How about the wedding being ruined by itself? I was dating a girl whose cousin was getting married. Cousin was an obese goth chick getting married to a dude even bigger than her. We show up on the day of the wedding. I 100% promise this is serious. They've secretly decided it would be a Gigallo wedding. Both bride and groom are in Gigallo makeup, and the priest's speech thing included "Thank God for the insane clown posse" and "Thank God for Craigslist," where they met. I guess it was weird. Not really ruining the wedding, but it certainly killed the vibe leading up to the wedding. I asked my brother to be my best man at my wedding. Brother and I, Catholic, GF, Episcopal. He says yes. Months after saying yes, he comes to us and tells us that he can't be the best man or even be at the ceremony because his priest tells him it will be a mortal sin for him to be a witness to the ceremony because I am not asking for dispensation and getting married in an Episcopal church. Okay, understood. Sad. But if that's the way you see it, we'll deal with it. At this point I ask my best friend to be my best man and all is good. Or so we thought. A couple months before the wedding, my brother starts a campaign calling my entire family and telling them they will be committing a mortal sin if they attend my wedding, and explaining how my children will be bastards in the eyes of God, and anyone who even sleeps under the same roof as us will be committing sin. WTF. I find all this out through cousins and friends and am in complete shock. Luckily I have a few cool family and they all show up for the wedding. Everyone had a "what the heck is wrong with your brother" question on the day of the wedding. But it was a great time with an open bar and live band. Here's the kicker of it all. My mom is Catholic. My pop is Episcopal. No divorces or any unhappiness. Just your normal suburban family. TLDR. Brother protested wedding to family members because of Catholic versus Catholic light. My mom stole my marriage license. I got married on Sunday. My aunt was taking flash photography the entire time, even though my officiant made the announcement about no photos or videos, and my photographer couldn't get some of the shots I wanted. My mom and my aunt were also being total B to everyone and all around really bitter and snobby. Then we did the signing of the license. I set it in my purse and walk away to get some wine. I come back and my mom is going through my purse. She said she was getting some gum because the brisket was too dry. It was only after she left that I realized I couldn't find it. She freaking took it. Now I have to get another one. They didn't ruin the wedding, but did ruin a couple pictures. An aunt and her family are notorious for showing up, eating all the food, stealing some drinks, and leaving. Her one son, nice guy that he is, has addiction problems and just can't keep it together. Her daughter is trashy and has a new boyfriend every week. She will show up to family events, make a gigantic plate of food, talk to no one, and leave. My family has a free vending machine in the man cave style basement and she will nearly empty before she leaves. So when my wife and I were planning the wedding, we didn't invite the one cousin with addiction problems, because at that point, he was in rehab. And we didn't let the girl cousin have a +1 because we were making some guest list cuts and she has trashy boyfriends anyway. Well, you can guess who shows up at only the reception. Skip the wedding part. We had an open liquor and beer bar, so the addiction cousin gets blitzed immediately. He was jumping into every picture he could and becoming a real nuisance. My dad, no relation to this cousin, almost had to kick him out before other family members took him away. The girl showed up to our semi-formal wedding wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, and her boyfriend of the week, who had the worst tobacco smile and looked like your typical redneck, was wearing a camo shirt and ripped jeans. She was filling her plate multiple times. She's not fat. She just takes as much as she can and stores it for later, while her BF got drunk. Then they had an awful maquillage session in the middle of the dance floor while groping each other. I went to the bar to get a drink, and since I was a groom, people led me to the front. Her BF was there and was like, what the heck, someone else said I was the groom, and he was like, you're the groom. No way, let's take shots. Everyone else that night was wonderful. It only takes a couple trashy family members to bring the mood down. But he said let's take shots. Not my wedding, but my boyfriend's, at the time, aunt's second wedding. His cousin Beth, the bride's daughter, got drunk and accused a 12-year-old girl of coming onto her man although her boyfriend wasn't even there. She shot glares at the kid the whole ceremony, and rolling her eyes during the vows. And at the reception, Beth cornered her in the bathroom, slurring her words and screaming and threatening she was going to knock her out. The poor girl was just crying, asking her what she did wrong. When her mom finally asked her to leave, Beth got mad that no one was taking her side. I don't know about you, but it's hard to feel bad for an overweight alcoholic screaming at a frightened 120-pound girl. It really brought the reception down, since there was only about 30 people who stayed after that fight. TLDR. Woman gets jealous of 12-year-old, screams and tries to fight her. I wouldn't say I ruined the wedding, but I definitely ruined one of my best friend's first dance. So my friend asked me to be the DJ at their wedding, which basically meant being the guy with the mic for introductions and hitting play on the playlist when the dance started. I should probably mention I freaking hate public speaking, but hey, anything for a friend, right? So it comes time to do introductions for the bridal party and start the first dance. So I say the names of all the bridesmaids and groomsmen during the introductions. They all did their stupid freaking dance that all people seem to do now. Then I get to the bride and groom. My first frick up was I introduced the bride by her maiden name right off the bat, then said frick into the microphone and corrected myself. My second freak up was I started to play their song for the first dance before I introduced them, so by the time they had walked into the venue and everyone stopped clapping, the song was 3/4 of the way over when they started to dance. So they danced for about 10-15 seconds. The song ended. I crap you not, this was an outdoor wedding, and as soon as the song ended it was dead silent except for the crickets in the field. Literally awkward crickets while everybody turned to look at me, like WTF, you started the song too soon. So I was like, you want me to play it again? The bride and groom said no, forget about it. And that's how I fricked up my friend's first dance. That's not your fault. They didn't want to pay for a DJ, so they got an amateur performance. This was literally not your fault. You did good for having zero interest or experience. They were cheap and they got better than what they paid for. Not a guest, but there was a popular place for wedding photos. I was a groomspeople, so there's like 3 or 4 bridal parties waiting to take pictures. This one group was hilariously fricked up. All the groomsmen are completely and devastatingly drunk, absolutely crap-faced. The new couple is having a knockdown, drag-out screaming match, and the bride throws her bouquet into the lake. The mill is throwing a temper tantrum, and then sees all of us watching this delightful caper, and screams at us, "What are you looking at?" To which one of our party says, loud enough for them to hear, "Well, that was worth the price of admission right there." The new couple is having a knockdown, drag-out screaming match, and the bride throws her bouquet into the lake. Obviously a marriage that will last. This is partly why divorce stats are BS. I don't think I ruined the wedding, but I got some awfully shameful looks. The reception was in a big barn on a horse ranch. Everyone had plenty to drink, especially me. During the speeches about half of the guests were having their own conversations and I couldn't hear a dang thing. Drunken, self-righteous me decides to yell out a huge "shut the frick up." Well, that is exactly what happened. You could have heard a mouse fart. The bride, my wife's friend, laughs it off, but I still feel pretty crappy about it. Nah, good on you, mate. Frick those inconsiderate assholes. I ruined a wedding one time, but it wasn't my fault. I swear it wasn't. I was a friend of the groom and I had an F-150, so I got asked to bring some chairs and a table to the reception hall, as people who own trucks are often asked to do. I agreed and was told I would be met there by a couple of women and a few guys to unload everything and place it. Cool. One of the women was pretty hot. I flirted a bit and she flirted back. She asked if I wanted to take a walk along the river that the reception hall was on. Sure. We walked for a while and talked, and it got hotter and hotter. We ended up making out on the riverbank for a bit and walking back to the hall, where I invited her to go for a ride in my truck. This was in rural Indiana. So in about 10 minutes we were along some numbered county road in the back of the truck, laying on a blanket and going at it. It was late evening and there was no one around. Then a car comes towards us. We laid still and waited on them to pass, but the car stopped and the girl from earlier got out and started screaming at us. Yep, the girl I was with was the bride. The wedding got cancelled. My friend punched me in the face. He found out later that I had no idea who she was and apologized. We are good now, and it was quite the scandal for a while. To be fair, you probably saved the groom from a lot of crap in the future. Plus, you didn't do it on purpose, so I'd say it was a blessing in disguise for everyone. This was not my wedding, but I was the flower girl. I know a while WGO, but remember like it was yesterday. So bride and company show up at the wedding. Bride had her gown. Flower girl, me, had her little dress, and the seamstress was delivering the bridesmaids' dresses to the wedding venue. Of course, wedding party got there far in advance. Long story short, seamstress never showed up with the bridesmaid dresses. Nobody knew what to do. Total panic. While 7-year-old me sat in the corner, wasn't quite sure what the ruckus was about. So I tugged on the bride and said they could wear those dresses, pointing to the cheer robes in the corner closet. Her eyes got wide, and they did. Wedding saved. LOL. TL. DR. Bridesmaids' gowns didn't show. 7-year-old me asks the bride if they could wear cheer gowns. They did. Wedding saved. I hope the bride got a refund, but that was some quick thinking for a 7-year-old, and the couple have a funny story to tell about the wedding. Good job. One of my groomsmen almost got kicked out of the restaurant during the rehearsal dinner for loudly arguing with the hostess about whether or not the fish were really ethically sourced or not. I was almost this guest at my uncle and aunt's wedding in a registry office. Apparently, I was 2 years old and sitting in the front row with my mum and shouted yes various times when the guy performing the ceremony asked if anyone knew of any lawful impediment stopping my uncle and aunt from getting married. My mum loves to tell this story. But you're too. During the minister's wedding right before vows, mother of groom let her phone ring loudly for like 30 seconds. Twice. My mother-in-law hates me. She spent any time she wasn't dancing during the reception staring daggers at me, complaining to the other guests at her table, and got in a very public shouting match with another one of our wedding guests after the reception. Even though she can't speak English, I was mortified and wanted nothing more than for her to crawl back to where she came from and never bother my wife and me again. Then a couple weeks later, she flew back home, and I haven't heard from her since. I have a story I can contribute. My wedding wasn't really ruined, but it almost was. My husband and I still haven't figured it out. Everything was going according to plan, aside from the stress of planning, of course, and a few weeks from the wedding. The owner of the venue was supposed to contact us and tell us the exact total to be paid. When he didn't, my husband called him up to ask how much we owed and the guy says nothing. You cancelled the wedding. What? After some back and forth, they figured out that someone who was not my husband had called the venue, claimed to be my husband, used his name and contract number, and cancelled the wedding. The only people who would have had access to that information is maybe one of the owner's employees, or someone in my husband's family. We tried to get the phone number from the service provider, but for obvious reasons they did not disclose. Other things to go wrong were his brother partially shaving his hair into a horrible haircut the day before the wedding without consulting us. The place we'd planned to take pictures at ended up being on fire when we drove there, so we had to take pictures elsewhere, and someone kept trying to hack into our wedding email account. We never figured that one out either. We also forgot to put the sand out, so during the ceremony my cousin had to sneak behind the stage and set it up. She managed without being noticed, and saved us the disaster. All in all, it was an average wedding, I'd say. The place we'd planned to take pictures at ended up being on fire. I love how casually you throw this out, like this is something that frequently happens to you. Or, man, it's on fire. I am not sure if you ruined it, but it is a fun story. At my wedding, my best friend was our best man. His wife, now divorced, was a very hot lush drunkenly mess. It had been this way for years. She promised him that she wouldn't drink during the wedding or reception. So about halfway through the reception, she is out there on the dance floor grinding on my 50-year-old 300-pound uncle, just wasted and giving him tunge. Seems she had a flask hidden someplace. She then starts trying to make out with just about every guy she can find. My friend then collected his wife and had to leave. Now, on the way home she gets pee and jumps from the car in motion and dashes down the street. She's a marathon runner, and my buddy lost her while turning around the car. She proceeds to go to a local bar and meet up with some women she knows from her work. They drink more and she gets in an argument with a woman another she knows that was at the bar. That woman leaves after my friend's wife attempts to get her to fight her. So, my friend's wife in her work friend's car chase them home. She ends up trying to kick in the woman's home door in all drunk and crazy. This woman finally opens the door and beats the crap out of my friend's wife. Her work friends had to take her to the hospital where my buddy finally got the call to go pick up his wife. Epic. That woman has a lot of rage to work through. One of the bridesmaids got insanely drunk. She was vulgar with little kids running around and ended up falling all over the place. It didn't ruin the wedding, but she peed me off. So here is my contribution. My husband and I got married 12 years ago and he and his sister ruined my wedding. To start, we lived in Oregon at the time and all of my family live in Georgia, so since I have a huge family who don't have the financial means to travel, and his family is very small, we went to Georgia to get married. The BS started as soon as we started planning. The Sil would make comments telling us we should just get married like she and her husband on Christmas in a tiny church with a couple of people. She made a lot of other suggestions too about how we should do things. Then, while at my in-laws on Christmas morning, 9 months before our wedding, my husband asks his dad to be his best man. It was a very touching moment. His mom cried. Later that night, his sister corners him and asks why he doesn't make her husband his best man. The fight about that between the whole family on Christmas Day was really great. Lots more happened, but I'll move on to our wedding day. We are all getting ready at a rented beach house. Admittedly, my Sil can really bring out the worst in my husband. He's stressed while getting ready and being an butt. She's being passive aggressive and making everything about her. For photos before the wedding, we are meeting at a park. I am riding with my friend and he is going to follow. On the way to the park, we get lost. No worries, we will just go to the wedding venue. Somehow, my husband and his sister start fighting, with guests arriving in front of everyone. He's manipulating and pushing buttons. He's blaming her for my not showing up at the park for photos. I finally arrived to the venue with my very soon-to-be husband, hands in pockets and saying what the frick. My sister then tries going between my husband and his sister to defuse everything with my Sil calling her an idiot, and then the minister threatens to leave because of the fighting. So after the ceremony, my sister-in-law has a horrible face in every single photo that includes her, and then had the nerve to tell me during my reception that her day was ruined and she would never speak to her brother again. So then, 2 days later, as I am packing to leave the beach rental, she comes into my room to tell me how hard the week has been for her. She goes on to say that there was God knows who sleeping on the couch, my best friend since 4th grade, and unruly, undisciplined children running around, my nieces and nephew, who really are great kids. Yet, my husband brings up renewing our vows occasionally, and while we do have a very happy marriage now, I have no desires for a vow renewal. Finally, a thread I can comment on. I recently had my wedding and we woke up together happy to be getting married. Then my soon-to-be husband received a text from his mother. Disclaimer: his mother had waist-length black hair. It's a photo of her. She cut and colored her hair exactly like mine. Shoulder length, brown with blonde streaks. I was livid. Of all days to color your hair, and to do it on my wedding day. Fine. I let it go and decided to just forget it. Finally, it's the moment we all have been waiting for. I'm walking to the aisle, and we reach the front. The parents were called up so we all could recite a vow together. Our wedding was held in front of a riverbank, mind you. His mother then proceeded to walk around me near the pastor, instead of being with the other parents near the groom. She proceeded to loudly scream and fall. As she fell, she grabbed my hair and I fell with her inches away from the riverbank. My moment. Ruined. She got up and laughed and walked away while I was on the ground trying not to cry. To be honest, I don't remember anything else from the ceremony. I was seeing red. We no longer speak to one another, and I will forever refuse to speak to that woman. My husband stands by me on that decision. Till this day, when I think about my wedding, I tear up. She ruined it and didn't even feel sorry for it. And those of you who say she fell and couldn't help it, after watching our wedding video, her husband and the pastor were holding her arms. She deliberately stepped back and fell. I know it doesn't help, but I think your feelings are completely justified. It sounds like she had every intention of making your wedding day her big look at me moment. If it was genuinely an accident, then she would have gone out of her way to help you off of the ground and made multiple apologies. At least your husband understands how you feel. My aunt had a very fancy formal wedding. Being 4, adorable and related, I was the obvious choice for the flower girl. Here is the thing. It's a long day for the wedding party. Between hair, makeup, photos and long-winded Baptist vows, even the most attentive adult will get tired and bored. So here we are, standing lined up by the altar, and the preacher finally asks for objections. At that moment, I yawned as loud as my little lungs would allow. The once silent room filled with 200 friends and family erupted into laughter. That is when I noticed that 200 people were watching me, and I got scared and did what many scared 4-year-olds do. Peed, cried and tried to run away. So here I am, a pea-soaked 4-year-old in a pink taffeta dress running about a church while my mother, the maid of honor, tries in vain to catch me. Running in heels and a ball gown is not easy. I still haven't lived it down 30 years later. That's priceless and innocent. The whole family will talk about how cute you were for the rest of your life. Sounds like you made a big fat bore of a wedding into a memorable day. My family flew in from Michigan. The wedding was in Phoenix. This was the first time my family met her side. Well, long story short, right before the speeches, my niece, 2, and her cousin's child, 2, were playing tag and running around like kids do. So, her cousin's child fell while running. Completely normal, and my niece went to help her up because she's a sweetheart. At this time, the cousin's father, let's call him Meathead, starts yelling and cursing at my niece until she starts crying murder. My sister runs over to see what's going on and he tells her to watch her freaking kid. This was just after my sister complimented her family for being so nice and welcoming. It didn't ruin our wedding because we didn't hear of this until after. Apparently Meathead's ghetto wife was running around bragging to our guests. My aunt didn't really ruin the wedding, but she said something really ignorant at the reception. We had a small wedding and reception, maybe 20 people, close family and friends. I wasn't particularly close with my aunt and uncle, but my father died when I was young, so I thought inviting his brother to my wedding would be nice. And it was. I'm glad he was there. But his wife was a real tea. She was upset her entire family tree back to the Stone Age wasn't invited, so she was snotty and ignorant every time we interacted with her. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.